What's good, everybody? I'm Jędrek. He's Sodek. And this is our last video ever this year. Let's go. Alrighty. So, as usual, end of the year means any type of rankings and summarization of the year. Everybody's doing that. We won't be very original, but here it goes. So today we have 4 things we will talk about. We will talk about things that we've liked about 2021 Magic, well, modern. Things we disliked about Magic. Things we are hoping for will happen in 2022. And things we would like to happen with a ban list in modern. In a pretty short version. We won't talk about every single card. We have like 5 or so cards that we want to get unbanned. Or at least we would like to have fun with them for like a week before thinking, it wasn't the best idea of all time. Let's ban them again. Okay.
Yep.
So, Sodek, let's start with the positives. So, what did you like about 2021?
There were actually many things that I like, but the first and the most important for me was that after the list of bans we got in February of 2021, for those who are new or don't remember, like 5 cards were banned, but technically 4 because one was irrelevant. It was Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath, Mystic Sanctuary, Field of the Dead, Simian Spirit Guide, and Tibalt's Trickery for some reason. It was like a chain of bans, like bans after bans, because earlier we got a Once Upon a Time ban, Oko ban, Terrakin Ironworks, whatever.
Astrolabe.
Astrolabe. There was a lot of bans in a very short period of time. And after these last 5 months, we haven't seen more of that in 2021. And this was finally something that I was missing for a long time. And finally happened that.
I think, but whatever.
And the metagame from like evolving from ban to yet another ban turned into a slowly evolving, like how it's supposed to be, like based on the metagame changes and finding new ways to attack the metagame, etc. So we haven't seen anything broken since then, and in my opinion that's actually super cool, because this means that there are fewer feel bad moments when your deck is like you found something too good and you were punished by your deck being banned, and that's very bad feeling. Like I survived like 10 bans on my decks over the like 8 or 10 years I'm playing competitively in modern, and it's never a fine thing to happen for you.
Okay, anything else you've liked in 2021?
Like this is connected to this first thing. The second thing is how the metagame was evolving after Modern Horizons 2, because there were decks that they were found very fast. For example, Rhinos and Living End and other, for example, Blue Red Murktide in a second, etc. But then all other decks were slowly adapting, and more of them were added to the bucket of tier 1 or tier 1.5 or tier 2 decks. And right now, like at the very beginning, like people were asking, like mostly because we had this a long period of time with bans, and once Modern Horizons 2 came, people were asking constantly about bans of Urza Saga, Ragava and whatever. But the metagame like survived first few weeks, and after that, everyone realized that like these are cards that can be beaten, and there's no need to ban anything. And as a result, like we can go straight to your point
Yeah.
about what's cool right now.
So I only have one thing that I think was really cool in 2021, but it's the most important thing about modern, which is modern is really cool. In my opinion, that's the best modern has ever been. There are other like universally loved periods of modern, for example, late 2017 uh, was was the format when people were pretty stoked about how the format looks, stuff like that. Uh, I think around Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan, so early 2018, people also like the format. It was like Lantern, Mardu was good. There were like various blue decks. People have liked that format, but I do think that Modern right now is really good. I like that basically every deck has a lot of play to it in almost every matchup. There are very few matchups in which you just uh, do nothing because there aren't many like points of interaction. For example, there are not many matchups as like in the past we've had matchups like I don't know, Scape Shift versus Infect, where you were just playing Glistener Elf. You were hoping that your opponent does not have one of their four lightning bolts, and if they didn't, you would kill them. Even if they did, most of the time you would kill them anyways. Like most of the matchups have a lot of decision points that are very important. That are very interactive. Even combo decks have a lot of interaction. You have Living End with like Grief and Force of Negation. You have Belcher that can play Pact of Negation, that can bait or put your opponent in an uncomfortable spot with like Blood Moon that you have to counter before going for the combo. You can stack Recross piles with like more interaction, stuff like that. So I do think that even most linear decks have a lot of play to it in most matchups, and I think it's
I
really cool.
I think the best example would be Hammer, the deck that was considered as a very linear one. Like had to adapt to the metagame, and there are more and more ways to interact. Just because having an interaction is crucial, because like if you don't have any decision points during your games, like opponents' raw power can easily do the thing. And for instance, uh, this is why I think Dredge is cool, but it will never. Maybe okay, saying never is very ambitious, but it will be harder than ever for Dredge to come back to tier one, because Dredge simply does its job quite well, but it can't interact that much, and that's why I feel that playing decks that can interact with the opponent, even if it's a linear one and you don't have that many ways to interact, but just a few of them, is something that's very rewarding in current model.
Yeah, I do agree. Okay, so let's move on from the things that we've liked to things that we didn't quite liked as much. Uh, so beforehand, Sodek had 2 points, I had one, but now I have 2 points as well because everybody likes to complain. And this time I will start. So I have like one pretty serious accusation. Maybe not even accusation. Thing that I really disliked, and the second one that's more memeish. So let's start with the less serious one. I've been playing a bunch of eggs recently, and I would really like for Ezra Saga to find Lotus Bloom. It would be way too good, but the deck would have been, I think, competitive. I don't think it would be broken. Like I think fetching Lotus Bloom would be really, really good, but not in this deck, in like an actually good deck. But it would make this pretty bad deck into something that's playable, which would be cool. Uh, and the actual point that I wanted to talk about is, I guess, a joint point, because I really, really miss the big MOX finals that used to happen once a year, when you had 2 or 3 days of playing. Were playing multiple formats. You're playing Vintage Cube. You're playing Modern. You're sometimes playing like Pioneer, other constructed formats. You've had top 8 brackets in different formats. You're playing quarterfinals in one format, like semifinals in another, finals in mixed formats sometimes. It was always crazy. It was always super fun to watch. And I am really, really disappointed that they switched to this, like, not even quarterly, like I think 3 times per year, because there are 3 showcase seasons, or 4 showcase seasons. I think it's 4, because there are 3 showcases feeding
I
to, or
think
maybe
they are
it's
free.
maybe it's
I think
3.
they're free because
Yeah, it was definitely 3 this year. Yeah.
yeah, and you have the last 2 slots for last qualifier
Yes.
winners.
So yeah, I don't like this new structure of, oh, hey, we still have 24 players, but we have 3 events, each 8 person each, instead of one big 24 people event. Like the last big mocks, which was, I think, last year. Yeah, it was last year. It was like postponed for quite some time, because it was 2019 mocks, I think, that happened last year. The one that I think Darkest Mage won.
Yeah,
He was playing Heliod. So yeah, it happened like in the autumn of 2020, even though it was 2019 tournament. Or you could have qualified in it in 2019. So it was kind of stretched in time, but yeah, it was a really good tournament, and I really liked watching it. And nowadays, I don't really know when Mox is every single time. Sometimes I'm like, okay, I'm browsing Twitch or Twitter on Saturday, and I see tweet from Randy Bueller, oh, we have Mox now. And I'm like, what the hell? I didn't even know that we are playing Mox this weekend, because it's not very well advertised. Not many people care about it. It basically, only people who really care about that Mox are the 8 people that play in it.
yeah.
Maybe
Like,
I will care
but
a bit more about the next one, because Canister is playing it. But
yeah,
still, it's like, it used to be the pinnacle of Modo competition. It was really high stakes. It was really high level, because thanks to the ladder queuing that was happening back in the day, it was like, I think it was around like half of the people were qualified through like events, and the other half was from ladder. So you've always had at least half of the field being really good players and notable modo grinders, at least half. And that only half happened only if all like 12-ish slots from tournament was taken up by randos, which like never happened. Like you've maybe had like 1 or 2 people every year that you didn't really heard about before, because they just, like, I don't know, got lucky in a big limited tournament that happened. But it was very rare also. Like most of the time you knew everyone, and it was like 24 really insane players, and it was just amazing. And those days I couldn't care less about Mox, really, which is sad. And also, I guess the second half of this point is that I was really disappointed that neither SCG or CFB made coverage for their
coverage.
big tournaments. I was really hoping for this, and I really wanted to watch it. I think it was known quite early on that CFB won't do it, and it was kind of sucky. But I just assumed that SCG will have it, like always, because they were always cutting edge on coverage. I think it's hard to argue that SCG's coverage was the best coverage ever. Like their production value, at least like in Magic terms, was the best. They've had best commentators with like Cedric Phillips and Patrick Sullivan was a really good duo. Most of the other, like they usually were switching the other duo. Like for a longest time, it was like Matthias Hunt with like Ryan Overturf. It was a pretty good duo. Then it was I think Emma Handy and Todd Anderson. I'm not the biggest fan of Todd Anderson, but Emma Handy was good. Like she knew what she was talking about. It was pretty cool. And then there was some other people also commenting, but even though they weren't as good as Cedric and Patrick Sullivan, it was still very very good, and I really miss those coverage events. Like I even throughout the pandemic, sometimes I just sit in front of my computer. I just fire up YouTube and I spend like 3 hours watching old SCG coverage because it's like I just miss those times. It was so good, and I hope we get some of those events next year. That's all I hope for, basically.
Okay, and like as a natural follow-up to this type of complaining is, in my opinion, given more tragic one, that we still haven't got any information about the competitive play in 2022 or anytime soon. And I totally understand that we are in a COVID situation around the world, but at least information what would happen after the rise of COVID would be a good thing for players, because right now, like, MPL will end this season, and after that we don't know literally anything outside one information about the future of competitive play. By that they meant that uh, it won't be a, like, they want to do this, but not as a way to be a full-time Magic player, something like this, just to not support it as a lifestyle. And that was it. So I would really like to know a bit more about the structure, even if all Pro Tours will be played in Alchemy or whatever they want to do on Magic Arena. I just would love to hear that, like earlier, there will be multiple ways to qualify to this type of events. And with the addition of God accounts, like I was playing on Players Tour Arena 4. When I didn't have an arena account, I just got one. And that wasn't a problem for me to just mm, prepare a bit and compete. And it was good enough for me to pay my Players Tour Arena 4. So it's not the biggest problem to adapt to the arena client. But like, information is what we are lacking right now.
Yeah, it's like,
Okay.
uh,
Mhm.
like I kind of understand that they can't really say it because, like, for example, they can't say, okay, so in 2022 we will do this, or in 2023 we'll do this, because they don't know if they will be able to do it. Like you can say, for example, okay, so at some point in a near future that's not specified yet because we can't afford to do that right now, we will do X and Y, but I don't know if they can really say this. So I I kind of uh, I kind of understand that but I'm also not happy that this is how it looks like. And when it comes to the announcement they've made, yeah, I think they've said roughly what you mentioned. Like I think the word that they were really like hammering on was sustainable. That they don't want Magic, like Pro Tours in some shape or form will come back, but it won't be a sustainable way to uh, make a living. So basically, what it makes, if you will win every single PT, sure, you will be invited to everything. That will be cool. and you will be the best player ever because you are winning every tournament you ever play. But it won't be possible to string like 10-5 finishes or 11-5 finishes like you did at the PT system. Or like even if you had like one weaker tournament, like you go 8-8-8 and 8, or you even drop before the tournament is over at the PT, you still could have been like gold or whatever because you went 11-5 in the last like other free produce, and that won't just happen. Like I think they said that there will be fractional invite system, but it will be more of a top 25 of the last PT is invited to the next PT, and not you are collecting pro points of an equivalent of pro points to just string on the multiple like
Yes,
years.
like you're right about it, but that wasn't my point. My point was that I would love to know at least anything
Yeah,
about how to qualify,
obviously that makes
and
sense.
that's it.
That makes sense. Okay,
Okay.
anything else you are salty about? I think there's one other thing
Yes.
that
Yes.
you will now rage
Yeah.
about.
We are returning to magic stuff. In my opinion, hate cards in Modern Horizons 2 were a bit too powerful. And I was saying it for a long time. There's a perfect moment to say it once again. I think that the duo, Doughty Voidwalker and Sanctifier and Vec, are a bit too pushed, in my opinion, to combat Grave decks. Because both cards can be main deckable, or at least they are very wide sideboard cards, and they can be added because they are really good. And after they comes down to play, you just can't do anything about them. Like at least you can kill Doughty Voidwalker, which is acceptable in my opinion. But the fact that Sanctifier and Vec has both protections, exiles all the stuff you've collected, and does not let you to do your stuff later on is such a mess, and it shouldn't happen. To some extent, I would also love to see Fury being nerfed by any mean, because the Fury alone killed a few archetypes, or at least styles of play. For example, playing tribal deck with Fury around is much harder. Without Fury, for example, I think elves could at least try to be a fine strategy, and with Fury around, it's really hard to play a bunch of 1/1s that needs to collect to have a critical mass of creatures. I think we would be able to find even more these really powerful hate cards, and overall, in my opinion, Modern Horizons 2 as a as an as a we can say story was not about the threats, was more about answers. And after Modern Horizons 2, we saw a rise of power level in threats. For example, Urza Saga, for example, Ragavan, Murtide, but also answers were much better. Like Prismatic Ending is the best example of that. And generally speaking, I think this is a good thing to do, because answers has to be powerful to not let the format evolve in a like too linear and goldfish thing. But overall, I think that like in a few examples, wizards could create a bit less powerful cards, and it would be still very fine and very playable. Okay, and I think you
I
want
just
to
want
add,
to
Henry?
Yeah, I just want to comment a bit on that. So, first of all, I do agree with this assessment that, like, overall, friends and answers should be somewhat balanced. Sorry. Uh, by which means, by which I mean that I think that answers should be a bit better than threats. Like the quality of answers should be a bit higher than quality of threats in general, because answers are inherently flawed because you need to answer, like, you need your answer to line up well against a threat, and all you need from your threat is just to be a threat. So it just stems from gaming theory or game theory. I've written a bunch of things about it in Polish for our website back in the day. Like basically, you have very basic game theory. You have threat answers, and then you have like 4 possible combinations. There is a threat that is either answered or unanswered, which is like 2 possible combinations, and then there is an you can, like, if you just make a graph of it, you have 0 1s in threats, which is you have threat or you don't have threat, and then you have 0 1s in answers, you have answer, you don't have answer. So there are 4 possible scenarios, which is 0 0. 0 0 is neither there is a threat or not an answer, in which case it's a draw, it's whatever, because there is no threat, but you don't need to have an answer for it. Like, you don't have an answer, but you don't need an answer because there is no threat. There is a possible of you have an answer, but there is no threat to answer with it, which is, sure, you will answer something with it later on, but your answer isn't very good right now because it won't further your game plan because it's a reactive card. There is the worst scenario for the answering player, which is your opponent has a threat, but you don't have an answer, and in which case the threat will just kill you. And then there is a possibility of, I have an answer, you have a threat, I will answer your threat, and then we trade cards. So what you need from answers is that the trade of answer versus threat should be profitable for answers, because otherwise there is no point in playing answers. You just want to play all threats, because that's why, like, even though, like, I think prismatic endings, Sodek already talked a bit about it, it kind of sucks that you can't really play stuff like enchantments that easily anymore, because prismatic ending is a main way to answer enchantments and artifacts, which is kind of lame. But also, like, for example, Unholy Heat, even though Unholy Heat is a really, really strong card, like, this is exactly what I was talking about. Like, you need your 1 mana removal spell to answer your opponent 3 mana card, because that's how you get advantage of from the answers, because you are trading upon mana or upon card quality. So, for example, back in the day, you used to play like Electrolyze, and you were killing like 2 Birds of Paradise or whatever, and you were drawing a card in the process. So you need to trade up on answers for answers to be viable, because otherwise you are, like, both extremes are really bad. Like, for example, Pauper is a miserable format to play. Like, these days, I think Affinity is the best deck in Pauper, so it's kind of outdated. But when I was playing a bunch of Pauper, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, it was like blue-black versus Boros all the way, and like black-white Pestilence, those type of decks. And the game would often come to decking because everybody had a bunch of answers that were way, way better than the threats, and it was just miserable. But the other side of the coin is even worse. For example, I think the most threat-skewed format I've ever played was Kaladesh Standard. It was the Blue-White Flash Standard. When you were playing Blue-White Flash, and you were on the play, and you've had a curve of like Traben Inspector into Smuggler's Copter into Spellqueller into Gideon, nothing could beat it. Nothing. Like, you were just winning against everything. It was super snowbally and super lame. So that's about threat and answers. About hate cards, I obviously don't really care about like Voidwalker and Sanctifier that much, but I do want to put Fury on my list. But then I thought, well, Sodek will definitely complain about Fury, so why should I double up on that? So yeah, I do think that Fury is very prohibitive as to what's possible in the format. I do think it kills many small creatures decks, and I've already talked about it a bit in our Polish podcast yesterday. I do think that it's a bit of a consequence of going, or like casualty of going to higher power levels, because, like, for example, in Vintage, the higher the power goes, I think the more it just converges on Xerox versus stacks in a very vague meaning of those. So, for example, Vintage is basically blue decks. There is Dredge, which is I think you can kinda make an argument that Vintage is that Dredge is a bit of a Xerox deck because it just goes through their deck very very quickly with Bazaar, and then on the other hand you have like aggro shops, which is a stacks deck in essence. And that's basically what Xerox v Stacks means. It's like you have those Xerox decks and decks that try to stop Xerox decks, either by playing shops things out of workshops or playing stuff like Narset, Hull Breacher, cards like these. So as the power level rises, the amount of viable archetypes shrinks. And I think creature aggro is one of the first archetypes that falls off. Like archetype like ramp, for example, is also an archetype that you very rarely see in older format because your cheap cards are just so powerful. There is no need to play ramp spells because expensive cards are not that much more powerful than cheap cards. So why would you waste your time and cards and energy to ramp if you can just play cheap cards? Similarly with creature aggro. Like Fury pushes it to the point at which playing small 1-mana creatures, like 1-mana creatures are just not worth 1 mana that often. And what can you do? Just print a bunch of 0-mana creatures? Like 0-mana Llanowar Elves? Like you can't do this, obviously. So it's like I dislike this part of Fury as well, just as Solexet. And with that very positive message about how dumb Fury is, let's go to the second part of our video, which is wishful thinking for 2022 and the modern ban list. So let's start with modern ban list. I think it's also I guess we can put it in the cool things that happen in 2021 box. We don't really want anything to be banned, right, Sodek?
Right.
Yeah. So modern is fun. I don't think anything needs to be banned. I do think, as I've already expressed a bunch of times, that I think Lurus will be banned at some point, but not in a I think Lurus will be banned next month, yes, tomorrow or next year even, but more in a I think if we still play modern in 2030, for example, I don't think Lurus will be legal in that format in that 10 years because people will get tired of not being able to play free drops in their deck. So I think it's a very, very long-term possibility, but I think eventually Lurus will be banned or just companion mechanic will be removed from competitive play, which I think is the best way to approach this. Companions are just dumb. Like, I've had a lot of hope for the companions, and I've said multiple times that I really like the mechanic. I think companion modern, like unnerved companion modern, was really cool as well. I really like that format. And I did have high hopes for them to like print more companions. I do think if there were like, I don't know, right now we have how many playable companions? 5, maybe? We have like Lurus and Yorion, which are clearly top 2 companions. Then we have Obosh, which is a powerful but very one-dimensional companion. And we have Kahira and Giganta, which are like not that great, but very free companions in many decks. So you just play those because you can, and you don't need to waste that much power or even any power to play them. So with only 5 companions being playable and only 2 of them, or 3, I guess, being really good, I think it's just a bit too repetitive. I would like to have like, I don't know, 50 playable companions. So every deck can choose a companion, and playing companions just becomes something that is a natural part of the format, and every deck has one, and you are just basically playing with a free card that's pretty repeatable, but that's what I like about Magic. I think this gameplay is pretty cool. So yeah. I do think that Lurus will be banned at some point, but nothing else should be banned. No Ragavan. Don't cry about Ragavan. Don't cry about Urza's Saga. Don't, for fuck's sake, I don't know, cry about Ancient Steerings or Urza's Tower or whatever else you want to. You've cried about for like, I don't know, 10 years now. But let's cry about some of those cards that are not legal, but we would like them to be legal. And as per usual, Sodek has more of those cards than I do. Because Sodek is a little cry combo baby, and he would like to play his uninteractive dumb decks once again. So,
What can I say?
so tell us, Sodek, which decks would you like to play again?
Okay, I would like to play Dredge with Faithless Looting. That's why I posted Faithless Looting on the list. Although I know it won't happen, and I also know that it would happen. I would not be very happy about it because the format wouldn't be better with it around. And for all of you who would like to play Arc like Phoenix again or anything else, like Faithless Looting, like Dredge with Faithless Looting but without Hogak could be an interesting thing to have in format, but that's only one thing. Like Dredge is still quite easy to be stopped, but there are also other Faithless Looting decks that would be kind of problematic to stop, especially with Blazing Rutwala around. Vengevine could be much better than expected. So I would like to see Faithless Looting still on the ban list. Maybe functional reprint with Faithless Looting without uh, the flashback would be a thing, or like with a strange drawback. I don't know which one exactly, but like Wizards were surprising me positively about wordings they were using in the last years. So maybe something could happen. For now, I don't think about it. Okay, second card, and I think it shouldn't be banned like never, like ever, never ever. Is Breach from Below, and I wasn't fast enough. Like I know that Jędrek will be say that the court is on phone and something broken will happen eventually. And I would say that cards should be banned because they are overpowered, not because okay, maybe time reasons with second sunrise is something like uh, we can say about. But generally speaking, the raw power of the card is the main reason to ban things. And Bridge from Below was banned strictly because of Hogak. Hogak was a mistake, even though I love the card and I really loved casting it. And Bridge from Below never was a tier 1 strategy, never wasn't something that you couldn't stop, etc. etc. And I don't think it would be a problem at all. Even like without Fatal Shooting, I don't even know about what type of strategy you would present with Bridge from Below around. And it's hard for me to present anything. I think that something with Altar from Dementia could be a thing, but it's still pretty challenging to build.
Okay,
And
so about Bridge, what I really dislike about Bridge is not exactly what Sodek said. Like, my biggest problem with Bridge from Below is that this card is either stone cold unplayable or turbo broken. There is
why?
no in between
Okay,
with Bridge.
okay. How
It's
about
either
Breach
doing
Vine?
really fucking dumb stuff or it's just useless.
I would not agree with that. First thing, Breach from Below is historically a way to get creatures from free from a graveyard. So, for example, I know legacy example, but it's an important puzzle in the Red Return decks, for example. And there was a oops decks with that Oracle, and if you draw too many Narcomipas, there's a way to generate
Yeah,
tokens
and that's
from.
all dumb broken stuff. That's what I'm talking
That's
about.
not that
Manaless Dredge
broken
is one of the
compared.
biggest abominations of Magic ever. Like, it shouldn't ever exist.
Uh,
It's utterly like disgustingly unpleasant to play. It's the worst thing that I think my worst experience playing like format ever was when I played Legacy GP and I got paired against Manaless Dredge. It was like, okay, so will I draw one of my two resin pieces? Okay, so I won. Will I not draw them? Well,
what's the
I lost.
problem?
And I can't even like against other combo decks. Like, okay, so I have Force of Will. Well, they are not casting any spells until it's not really relevant if they are casting spells or not. Like, they cast one spell the whole game. It's called Flashback of Dread Return, and you don't really care if it resolves that much most of the time.
So
like, this is just so plainly uninteractive, and it's just garbage. It's just garbage gameplay.
And like you remind me of all of these people who are complaining about Urza's Saga, for example. Like this is the same type of
No.
argumentation.
Urza's Saga is Magic the Gathering. Manaless Dredge is not playing Magic the Gathering. That's the problem. You don't cast spells.
So
You don't use mana. You don't do any fundamental things of Magic. And Urza's Saga can be... Why Urza's Saga is an okay card? Why Urza's Saga is not broken and banned? Because you can interact with Urza's Saga by normal means of Magic the Gathering. And you can't do that with Dredge. And that's... Or Manaless Dredge. Like, I'm fine with normal Dredge. I am definitely fine with, like, okay, so I cast Faithless Looting. Or even if you are playing, like, I don't know, Cephalid Colosseum is a land that you can't counter, but you can still wasteland it. Like, you can still do things that are powerful or like acceptable in the format and deal with that deck. But if your plan is, okay, so you begin, I will just discard to hand size and then I will start dredging and you can do anything about it. It's like, it's just not Magic the Gathering, in my opinion.
Yeah, the trick is that, yes, you can. You can be faster, you can have any form of break hit card, etc., etc.
But it's still not Magic. It's still not Magic.
Dredge is not any form of threat in Legacy. So you are complaining about things that you don't like, not that's raw power problematic one.
It's just not Magic, Sodek. You don't understand me. It's not Magic the Gathering.
Cards. You are using Magic cards. Am I wrong?
You could be also... your hand could be like 1 Dredger and 6 Ace of Spades. You wouldn't care because it doesn't matter what your cards does other than you need a Dredger. Really.
I once again ask, so what?
So that's what I don't like about it. That's like it's not Magic to me.
To you,
it's less Magic than Commander, for God's sake. No, like... Okay.
Like Commander cast spells, that's true, and
it's just not an interesting gameplay. Like, you play against you play against Manaless Dredge, and it's either you win or you lose, and you know it the moment you draw your hand. Really, like I think
you are just wrong, and
isn't Manaless Dredge a deck
I would just go further because like we can talk about it for hours and we won't.
No, but answer this question. Yeah. Isn't Manaless Dredge the deck with most lopsided matchups you ever seen? Because you are either playing against a faster combo deck and you are losing, or you are playing against an interactive deck with hate piece and you are losing, or you are playing against an interactive deck with no hate piece and you are winning, or you are playing against a slower combo deck and you are winning, I guess. So like, it's all... There is everything that I said before about why Modern is so good right now. There are so many decision points, so many ways of... changing the outcome of the game, both from you and your opponent. Manaless Dredge lacks anything of it. And that's what I dislike about this deck so much.
I'd say only two words. Cabal Therapy. Cabal Therapy means that the deck... And you see Cabal Therapy more often than Force of Will deck will see Force of Will.
I'm not saying that Manaless Dredge is not a skillful deck. I'm saying that there is no means of interaction with it. That's the problem.
Okay, and like the fact that you like playing very controlled decks and
no, it's nothing to do with my likings. How can Delver deck, for example, interact with it? It can't.
Play Ragavan, something, Murktide attack, easy.
Like, well, now Dredge is unplayable, but look at like when I'm talking about Manaless Dredge, like Manaless Dredge is now unplayable because I guess cards are just too strong. But when Manaless Dredge was good, like I don't know, 2 years ago, like you just couldn't do anything. Yeah, that's how it looked.
That's just not true.
That's how it looked.
We can still talk about this, but you just think about Manaless Dredge from 2015, not like Manaless Dredge can be overpowered pretty easily it still has a huge fade rate. It still like, especially with London Mulligan, you can't really afford to mulligan with Manaless Dredge. You have to keep whatever you have because you need to
Yeah,
discard 2 hand size.
that's
And
true. But
opponent with just 2 cards with hate can like
okay,
win enough times
that's true. But also, I will answer with your own question from before. So what? Like that's what I'm talking about. This deck does not produces interesting games of Magic to anyone, really. The only interesting part of playing Manaless Dredge is how good at playing Cabal Therapy Dredge player really is. That's the basically only interesting part of the deck.
You are like, I expected more from you, Jędrek, and
No,
like
I'm
you
a
are
big lover
wrong
of
for
combo
so
decks. I really think
you
that
are wrong on so many levels with Manaless Dredge that
no,
I
Manaless
don't
Dredge is
want
just a
even,
garbo deck. I
in your
hate
opinion.
no, I hate how like, and it's not because like for this whole time you were painting me as this player who only like to play blue decks, and that's what I love, and I'm just crying because I'm losing to Manaless Dredge. I've played against Manaless Dredge once in my life, I think. So it's not like
Nice.
I've got killed by it thousands and thousands of times, and I've built some resentment throughout the years. It's just every time I watched it on coverage, or I watch my friends playing Legacy and playing against it, or whatever. It's just I really like combo decks. I think combo decks are a very important part of Modern, and we'll later talk about things that we want to happen in 2022. And we'll talk about, well, combo decks as well. And I second Sodek's opinion. I think combo decks are important. I would really like to have good Storm deck in the format, for example. But I think there is like interesting side of it, and which is the majority of combo decks or majority of linear decks, and there is very small subset of extremely disgusting play patterns and very uninteresting things about Magic the Gathering, and Manaless Dredge is just one of those, in my opinion. And
But
that's it.
that's your problem, Jędrek, because you think about on your opinion and don't like, you, if you could, you wouldn't allow others to have their own fun. Manaless Dredge isn't overpowered by any means, and it can't even do any results recently. So if
I
people like playing
I,
this
I
type
think
of
you are
Magic,
very, very wrong. Like
it,
this is one thing. Like if I could take one thing out of Magic the Gathering, it would be Manaless Dredge, and that's it. Like this is just I'm not like hostile against everything I don't like in Magic. Like for example, I don't really enjoy certain playstyles, certain decks, but I'm fine with them existing. It's just this one thing. Isn't there anything you would like to not happen in Magic? Like, would you not erase Sanctifier Unvec from Magic if you could, just with a snap of your finger? Don't you think it's a dumb card?
I think it's badly designed card. I don't
And
think,
I
like,
think Manaless Dredge is as an effect of many design mistakes over
okay,
the course of
still,
Magic.
whatever. We started this discussion about Bridge from Below and how miserable it is in your opinion.
And now
Sure,
you
it can
can
be.
listen to us arguing about Manaless Dredge for 15 minutes because I sure as hell won't cut this part. You will hear all of it. All of it.
Check your Facebook later. I already started writing about what you could say.
I can't
shorter.
I can't check my Facebook because you will freeze. Your video
Yeah,
feed will freeze, so
like,
I'm not doing it. Because
will do
you
it afterwards.
begged me many times to not do that, so I'm strong. I'm not doing it.
Okay, moving on to Modern and Bridge from Below.
Sucks.
It's like the only playable Bridge from Below deck wasn't playing dredge cards. Like there were two. There were Hogak Bridge with Altar, which was banned because of Hogak mainly, and second it was Bridgevine, which was a fine deck. It wasn't any form of, like, it wasn't too powerful. It was easy to hide out, etc., etc. And I think these type of decks are still important and relevant because they punish the metagame that's too fair, like another combo deck, and attacking from the graveyard is something important. Right now, there's Dredge around, but Dredge has its own problems, and having Bridge from Below and the potential deck with Altar of Dementia would just be fun and fine. And I don't think that it would ever dominate modern as it is, and it wouldn't force modern players to play 6-7 graveyard cards like it was, for example, I think when Dredge was played in extended. I don't know if you remember these times.
I've listened to podcasts and watched some footage, so I knew how
Yeah,
good.
and that
I
was
know how good
and
Dredge was back then.
yeah, and Dredge was like there was a good metagame for Dredge because people were not playing 8 copies of Hate post sideboard, but just 6. That was how Bridge from Below was broken back then. But nowadays it's not a problem because other cards are just so more powerful.
Okay,
And
so I,
I
I,
think
I
it's
do
perfectly
agree
fine on
that
them.
Modern could use a good graveyard deck. I don't agree about Bridge Unban. I do think that like there are two different about banned cards and unbanned cards, I guess, in general. There are two different standpoints that you can take, two different stances you can take when talking about banning and unbanning cards. What's the reason to unban this card? Is there a reason to unban this card? Or is it a reason that it should stay on the ban list? And for me, when I scour for possible bannings in the format, I'm asking myself whether this card deserves to be on the ban list, whether you should ban this card. And when I'm looking at the ban list, I'm not asking whether this card should stay on the ban list because it deserves to be there on power level. I ask myself whether this card deserves to be unbanned. So I wouldn't ban Bridge from Below myself. 2 years ago, I would just ban Hogak. But now that Bridge is already banned, I don't think there's any reason to unban it because it wouldn't give anything relevant to the format. That's just my opinion. That's
like,
what there are many cards that I think you could unban, but why would you? Nothing good will really happen. Like for example,
there's a risk. For example, Umezawa's Jit is a risk. Yeah.
Hypergenesis is another card that probably will be unplayable in the format, but because Glimpse of Tomorrow is doing roughly the same thing, even a bit better, I would say. But there is basically you already have this cascade into large think fantasy fulfilled by Glimpse of Tomorrow. So those type of players, other than very specific group of people who were playing Hypergenesis many years ago and they want to play precisely Hypergenesis and not Glimpse of Tomorrow, even though it's a similar type of deck. Like, nobody really needs Hypergenesis to be unbanned, other than this very, very, very small group of players. And only those players will be happy about it. And there is a possibility that Hypergenesis will eventually become broken. So, like, I just think Bridge is in a similar position. You could unban it, but why? I just don't think that it's overall a good change.
I just told you why, because of lack of real graveyard force.
I think there are many better ways to. I do think that there are many better ways to enable graveyard decks. As you said already, I think that Careful Study reprint or color shifted Careful Study would be much better addition to the format. Like both from the format standpoint and from graveyard decks standpoint. I think color shifted Careful Study would push graveyard decks more than Bridge from Below Unban would. It's just a stronger card and it's a more versatile card that can be played in many different graveyard decks.
So, like at this point, like at this moment, I think it's
okay,
very safe.
Moving on from Bridge from Below and looting.
And okay, moving on. Gorgari Grave Troll XD. Like I would love to see the card that would be on the ban list, then unbanned, then banned again, then unbanned again, and once again banned. It would be just
okay,
fun.
so that would be pretty funny. The one thing I really like about Grave Troll is that they unbanned it because they were like, okay, so maybe it's not too strong, and then it's proven itself to be too strong, so they banned it. I really like this pattern of, okay, let's give that a chance, but maybe we will ban it again. I think that's a really healthy thing that should happen with cards.
Okay, let's return then to the Bridge from Below discussion.
No, I just think this card shouldn't be unbanned because there is no feel good aspect. I think the feel good aspect is really important.
Okay, so do you feel that feel good aspect about Dredge 6 card was better than feel good.
Definitely,
Feels
because Dredge is a
good
beloved
bridge.
strategy for many, many players
Okay,
in general. Like,
like
what percentage of Dredge people, like, there is much larger group of modern players that used to play Dredge in modern than people who used to play Bridge from Below Dredge in extended and is still playing in modern. So like,
how about Bridgevine decks?
Bridgevine is like whatever.
No, it's not like whatever. Like it was a big group of players who just would like to play Vengevine, but and
So
now they can't.
you can bolster Vengevine in different ways, I think.
There aren't any good ones.
You can
That's the
you can
problem.
print them.
But
You don't have to unban cards. You can print them.
yeah, like sure,
Like
whatever.
once again, I think the biggest boon for Bridgevine that got for Vengevine decks that got printed, and the fantasy about Vengevine, in my opinion, is not making a bunch of zombies off of Bridge from Below. It's returning 2 Vengevines on turn 2 or 3 Vengevines on turn 2. That's why people are playing Vengevine decks, because they want to return multiple Vengevines early on. And I think the biggest like advancement for those decks was printing Blazing Rudwalla. But now you need ways to make this deck consistent.
Yeah.
So you need this kind of discard outlet. That's what you really are missing from those decks, not Bridge from Below. That's just my opinion.
Sure, you still have only 4 Vengevines, and something else to be discarded is also important.
Of course, you can play once again. You can complete with like hollow ones or whatever, right?
But it's still not a card you want to discard. You want to cast after you discard stuff, so it's a bit different part. Okay, can we just leave Bridge from Below today? At least today. Thanks.
Okay.
About Golgari Grave Troll. Personally, I feel the way to make a dredge deck better is not to print better enablers, because I feel that the current shell without Fated Looting is still fine. I would love to see a better dredger, because Golgari Tag is a joke, in my opinion. And I feel that Golgari Grave Troll will be a bit like a dredge 6 card can be a bit too powerful. And there's nothing I can say to convince myself that it wouldn't be. But I would love to see another Dredge 5 card.
Okay, what do you think about that? I know it will never happen, probably. But I think it would be kinda reasonable for Dredge to ban Stink with Imp, but unban Grave Troll, to give you Dredge 6 instead of Dredge 5. It will never happen. Ever. Because WotC will never make this decision. But I do think that it would be a good thing for Dredge. Like, I think having 8 very good Dredgers is a bit too much. Like, I think 8 Stink with Imps, if you can play 8 Stink with Imps, it's probably better than playing 4 Grave Trolls, 4 Golgari tags. Like, you would rather have 8 Dredge 5 cards than 4 Dredge 6, 4 Dredge 4s.
I'm not that sure, because the first Golgari Grave Troll found can be rediscarded.
Oh, of course. Definitely.
So I think I would probably be more on 6-4 than 5-5.
Okay.
But both, like, it's a similar situation, in my opinion. Especially when you side out a few dredgers post sideboard, and you would just side out Dredge 4.
Any non-graveyard related cards you would like to see in Modern?
One more. It's Glimpse of Nature. The card that was on the ban list from the very beginning because of the threat of combo elves, but with so many responses right now, with all like counter magic and which can stop Glimpse of Nature, with Fury around that's killing elves, etc., etc. I just don't feel that elves with Glimpse of Nature, without Wild Symbiote, without Gaea's Cradle, that would be a problem at all.
Yeah.
There are also other decks that would be able to use Glimpse of Nature, for example, Affinity.
Yeah, I think Affinity would be the best Glimpse deck, probably, like right off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Because it's better against Fury than Elves is.
Yeah, and your game plan without Glimpse of Nature is still fine. Sure, it would be a feels bad moment when you dump your whole hand and you draw Glimpse of Nature from the top, but that's the part of the cost you're paying for playing this type of card. Also, the mana base wouldn't be that good to support it, so it wouldn't be that free to add it, and it would add affinity, a bit of power, and it would give the deck the identity it lacks, in my opinion, right now, if we compare affinity to Hammer. In my opinion, Hammer right now is just a better affinity deck, and Glimpse of Nature would give the affinity a real tool to say Hammer is faster and more and can kill you on turn 3 more often, compared to Affinity, which is an aggro deck that has a lot of card advantage and can win a lot of heavy attrition battles. And I just don't see the card being bad and being bad. By bad I mean bad for the format, so like too powerful. And I also see many good points of unbanning it. So
Yeah,
this,
I
in my
agree.
opinion, is a
I do
very
think
safe
that
unban.
I do think that Glimpse of Nature is basically a poster child of this engine card that I would unban, because there is a lot of people who would like to play this Elf Ball deck, for example. A lot of people who play Elves and Extended Legacy in other formats, or never played Elves but are interested in this fantasy of playing multiple small creatures and just drawing cards, drawing cards, drawing cards. I think it's a very enjoyable thing for many people. I think also many people who used to play a lot of casual Magic. Elves is like one of the most popular tribes amongst casual people. A bunch of people who just played in their kitchen table and they decided to try modern, and they are like, oh, I have this elves deck that I've played for many years with my friends, just in like in school or in my apartment or whatever, and I would like to play similar deck in modern. So I really would like for elves to be at least a decent deck. That would be super good, and I'm all about unbanning Glimpse of Nature. Moving on to cards that I would like to see unbanned, there are two cards. One of them falls in the category of I would like it for a week and then maybe I would hate it, but I don't think I would hate it. But there is some danger of this, and that's Arcum Astrolabe. I do think that Arcum's Astrolabe kind of died for sins of other fire cards like Oko, Uro, probably Sanctuary.
Hey, Jędrek, hey.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that this is the same situation as Hogak versus Bridge from Below ban?
I think Astrolabe ban was more deserved than Bridges ban. But still, I would like to see it. I would like to see Astrolabe back because I think it was doing a bunch of cool stuff. I just don't think that, like, the problem with Astrolabe was that you could have played 4-color decks with Mystic Sanctuary very easily, and also those Sanctuary decks, it was like, okay, so on turn 1 I cast Lightning Bolt, on turn 2 I cast Abrupt Decay, and then I have Archmage's Charm and Mystic Sanctuary on turn 3 and 4, and that was dumb. That was dumb as hell. And I do think that without Sanctuary and without Uro, which is a very important part of those decks as well, Astrolabe would kinda make those 2 and 3 color fair decks better at splashing for cards, which is something I really enjoy. I really like splashing for some cool cards. I would like for those, like, for example, you can build then a blue-white deck that will always cast Archmage's Charm on free. And you can even play like a cool land like Castle Ardenvale, or you can play a second basic planes and actually cast your cards on curve, which is cool. And then if you are playing a 2-color Astrolabe decks, you are never getting cheesed by Blood Moon while playing 2 colors, which I do think that Blood Moon being good against 2-color decks with no colorless land is just, I don't think that should happen. Like, I'm okay with Blood Moon. I think Blood Moon should punish 4-color decks. I think that Blood Moon punishing 3-color decks is okay, but I don't think that punishing 2-color decks with Blood Moon is something that should happen. I just dislike it because I think there is, like, one of the draws to playing 2-color deck should be your mana base is good and you are good against things that punish greedy mana bases, because playing 2-color mana base, even if you are trying to cast Archmage's Charm on turn 3, I don't think it's greedy. Like, it just, I think that should be
like
allowed.
I wanted to say that like 2-color decks are not that often affected by Blood Moon, but 2-color decks with very hard casting cost like Archmage's Charm can be attacked this way. And if you are greedy non in terms of numbers of colors you are playing, but in terms of mana sources you need to cast your spells early, they're a bit two different things.
Yeah, but I think this should be the award for only playing 2 colors. That you can be that greedy. I think that's something that should be an incentive. Because otherwise, why aren't we all playing bunch of 4-color decks? Like
it's a longer discussion, and we are talking already for over an hour. And there
yeah,
are a lot of other things to say.
I would like I would like for Astrolabe to come back. I know that Astrolabe will probably never come back, but I would just like for it to happen. I just like the card. And
I'm very scared about this potential unban, mostly because how it would naturally fit into 4-color blink. It would be just another play for 1 mana.
Yeah, so one I guess one asterisk. I would like for Astrolabe to be unbanned, but for companions to be banned. Like, I think Astrolabe with Yorion is too good. Like, Yorion having Astrolabe and Abundant Growth is too good. I agree with that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't like for it to happen. But I would like basically, what I would like to to happen is basically printing Astrolabe into 2017 Modern, more or less, when you can just fix your mana in your, I don't know, Jeskai deck or whatever. That's what I would like. Okay. And the last card that I would like to see unbanned, which I think is one of the more likely unbans, I would say. If you actually take a look at the format for a good amount of time and you understand what's going on, and that is Mycosynth Lattice that we already talked with Sodek about, I think last week or 2 weeks ago or a month ago. Never mind, it doesn't matter. But we already talked about the card. I do think that Mycosynth Lattice is something that would allow Tron decks to really go over decks that Tron is supposed or always was supposed to go over, which is other fair decks. For example, the fact that 4-color goes over the top of Tron, like, is not how it's supposed to work. Like, it kind of throws the whole format into imbalance because there is nothing that goes over 4-color. So, like, 4-color has 15 removal spells for early creatures, so you can just deal with aggro decks that try to go under you, and nothing goes over it. That's not how it should work, in my opinion. And having Mycosynth Lattice is like, I do agree that one card win condition with like Karn, which is kind of hard to interact with, is not that great of a feeling, and a lot of people would say it's unfun, and I do agree it's kind of unfun, but I do think that even though it's unfun, I think that the metagame consequences of this being unbanned are good enough that it's worth having this unfun factor. And you can just play a bunch of Ancient Grudge in your sideboard or whatever. Like, every color can play artifact removal these days, so
every color can play a Gravehate for Bridge from Below. Bank.
Okay. We were supposed to not talk about Bridge from Below, okay?
I had to. About Lattice, I think like Tron players is such a very dedicated group of players that
I'm showing you very discreetly to lean back in your chair because you are too close to your microphone.
Okay, sorry. Cool. Okay, so again, in my opinion, Tron players are so dedicated for all these years to this one archetype that they should get the help when their deck is just unplayable. And in my opinion, like, Mycosynth Lattice isn't something that that's like too powerful, because like unfun things happen in eternal formats in Modern.
I agree.
Especially.
I do think like Eye of Ugin would be Eye of Ugin is an unfun card.
Like, even not talking about Eldrazi Winter, but just Eye of Ugin as an endless wave of Uh,
Emerald Cool Eon Storm. It's like
yeah,
like
in Tron.
what I think is good about Tron is when it's a deck that has really powerful threats that can be played really early, but the cost of it is that they have many blank draws in the late game because that's how ramp decks works. Like you don't want to draw like rampant growth on turn 11. And when your expedition maps and Sylvan Scryings doubles as a win condition and the best win condition you can ever have later on, that's just once again throwing those things into an imbalanced state. So yeah, I think Eye of Ugin is Zakas, but I think Mycosynth Lattice is a perfectly
Nakas.
cool card to have in the format. Oh, and I also wanted to say something about Tron because I've had a really fun match recently against a Tron person. I was playing a bad Grixis deck yesterday, which was no Lurus because I really wanted to play Jace because I've missed Jace and I haven't played Jace in many months. So I've played a Grixis deck with 3 Jaces, no Lurus, and I've had like main deck Blood Moon, 1 copy of Blood Moon to answer Saga because I can't loop dress downs, like yada yada yada. And I've had some more Blood Moons in the sideboard. And I've played against Tron player, and I've just casted Blood Moon turn 2 off of Ragavan. Then I had all mountains, and I casted Blood Moon with on turn like 4 with only mountains, and then I start casting Ragavans with dash, and I just had treasures to cast my blue and black cards, and they were very salty, and they were saying stuff like, "Oh, you are playing such a bad mana base with Blood Moon." Only because you have Ragavan, and I'm like, yeah, I'm doing that because I can do that because I have Ragavan, and it was so good because they were very hellbent on saying that Ragavan needs to be banned, and they said that if a card, I think that's what they were about to convey, but because their English wasn't the best, but it was more or less, if there is a card that makes an archetype playable, whereas it wouldn't be playable without that card should be banned. And I'm like, okay, so do you think that Expedition map should be banned because without it Tron would be a bad deck? And they're like, Tron isn't as oppressive as Ragavan. And I'm like, that's not what you said. It's like, basically, you should ban every card ever until we are just playing a bunch of limited creatures because you can't ban every limited creature on the planet. But yeah, this was pretty funny. I do overall would like Mycosynth Lattice to be back in Modern. Maybe I would regret it later on, but I do think that Tron needs some help, and I think that's the healthiest way for Tron to basically come back. Okay, so let's go to the last part of our video, which is things we would like to happen in 2022, and I guess near future in general in Magic. If it happens in 2023, we'd be fine with that as well, but yeah, you know. Okay, so I'll start because I think my points are a bit less developed as Sodec points. They are pretty fast things, and so we can start with them. So first of all, I am a real big proponent of finishing land cycles in general. So I don't think that every land should be a cycle. Like, for example, I don't think that you should have 10 growth of the Burn Willows or something like that. Even though blue-white and blue-black growth of Burn Willows are at the top of my wish list ever, which will never happen because those lands would be super broken. But in general, I think, like, for example, there are 5 Triumphs. I would like for them to print remaining 5 Triumphs. There are 6 Canopy lands. I would like to see 10 Canopy lands. And there are some other less important cycles. I would say Triumphs are the most important, in my opinion, than Canopy lands. And Triumphs are the most important by far. Canopy lands are like, okay, sure. If it would happen, it would be cool. For example, I've seen Harlan Führer playing a pretty interesting take on Hammer recently with 4 Stormforge Mystics, of course. 1 Sword of the Meek and like 3 Top Tier Foundries. And it looks very cool. I really like incorporating Top Tier Foundry into Hammer for more like grindy power.
and it was just so sad when I saw their mana base of just flooded strand, some hallowed fountain, some Seachrome coast, and then it was one of each white canopies because you don't have blue-white canopy, and it was like so sad to watch. And I would just like for them to print the remaining of those to feel this completeness. And then the other one is I would like for Wizards to keep this like cycle of modern development, let's say, which is standard legal sets are either not very impactful or not non-impactful at all on modern. You like get some singleton cards for modern, like you got Consider in Midnight Hunt, then you got like Cultivator Colossus in Crimson Vow, and both of those cards are okay, but they are by no means like super impactful or anything. And then every like 2 years or so you are getting Modern Horizon set or any other modern only product that they release, and at that point this is something that really pushed the envelope in the format, like Modern Horizons 1 or Modern Horizons 2. And I really like this model of modern is more or less the same for 2 years and then we are changing things up, because it's still a modern format that we kind of know. There are still cards that were good back then and are good right now, but there is something that changes. I think that we couldn't really like feel it between Modern Horizons 1 and Modern Horizons 2 because they've printed a bunch of nonsense standard legal sets like Eldraine and Theros and Ikoria with companions and like M20 and things like that. But I do think that right now, when they luckily, thankfully, pulled the trigger back on how strong cards are in standard legal sets, I do think that it's something that is beneficial for the format. I really like how this shapes modern, and I would like for it to continue throughout next years. Okay, Sodek, what do you have to say?
Okay, about my wish list, there are also 2 points. The first one is like pretty simple. I would love to see more tournaments in a traditional way of playing. Like we were playing this year in 2 bigger tournaments, both were in Poland. Like Paprikash, one had 160 players, one had 130 players. It was super cool to play them. Even though
Yes.
I ended in top 16 once and I lost horribly in the second one. And Kendrick was in one top 4.
Yeah, I top for
And
one of them and went like whatever in the second one, like
yeah,
4-2 and 2.
and there are like also other tournaments around the world. Like we have 4 seasons in Bologna, Energy Series, NGR. I don't know. I'm not sure.
NRG, yeah.
Energies.
Face to
Channel
Face
Fireball had
also
face to
has
face.
their tournament.
Channel Fireball had the tournament, etc., etc. And in the world without an official high stakes tournament for like from the Wizard side, I like that private companies started creating tournaments, and I hope this will keep like they will keep doing that, and we'll have more opportunities to play
With coverage.
with especially with coverage.
Yeah, that would be
And
super cool.
the second thing is more Magic related, is about the printed cards. I would love to see something to help spellbait combo decks, because like for a long time I couldn't play any spell-based combo because they were just too weak, especially after Single Spirit Guide ban. Like Ad Nauseam was a bit playable with it, but without the ape, it's just not competitive enough. Belcher was soft banned because of the Reckless Paths bug on MTGO, and once it came back, I felt how much I missed this type of playing, like not playing creatures, playing your own game plan, etc., 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 etc. And I would love to see something that's a bit closer to Legacy Spellbook combo, like when you have this 1.5 or two card combo decks that needs other cards to work, for example, ad nauseam tendrils
Yeah,
or
Legacy Storm
Doomsday.
decks, basically.
Like you have engine, you have some form of payoff, but you have still enough cards to interact with, like 6 or 8 cards to be able to interact, and you are working on, like, you do not have creatures to compete, but you have ways to do your stuff. The like Lotus Bridge deck was very close to it. Lotus Field deck with Underworld Bridge, Tom Scour, and rituals in form of Tweedle effects, but the deck lacks a bit of consistency with only 4 Lotus Fields, and for Underworld Bridge, at least you can have Wish, but Wish is a kind of a bit overcosted tutor.
Yeah, I think you would basically need crop rotation for this deck.
Yeah, most likely.
Something like this.
Or like any form, maybe better countries, but countries are
Lean
very
back.
yeah.
Lean back in your chair.
Cantrips are very.
Yeah, I actually talked about it with Havai, our friend, who's a very passionate about Storm, and yeah, we've came to a very similar conclusion that basically for Storm to be good again, you would need something that would make Storm not a creature deck. So because of Storm like revolving around creatures now, like every form of interaction is basically good against Storm. Graveyard Hate is okay, not great, but like Graveyard Hate can hurt Storm, Creature Removal can hurt Storm, Counter Magic can hurt Storm, Discard can hurt Storm, everything, every way of interacting basically can hurt Storm. And
we're not even talking about the Storm Hate, for example,
yeah,
Raw Flow.
Yeah, just plain normal ways to interact with people. And I do think that combo decks should have this going on for them, that they are circumventing certain forms of interaction game one. I do think that like non-creature interaction should be good against Storm. Like that's one of the reasons to play them, because non-creature interaction is often not that great against creatures. But you should be rewarded for not playing any targets for like Unholy Heat. Like I think it's a super big deal if your deck is not affected at all by removal spells, like creature removal spells. I think there should be combo. Like that's one of the reasons that Belcher is so good, because people have so many dead cards against Belcher because they have 0 creatures. So I would like for Storm to be. I would like for Storm to be this type of deck. I don't think that you can unban Ride of Flame. Basically we were just joking that I do think that discard spells are really good in Storm, and it's kind of sad that Storm doesn't really have any good ways to splash black cards, because I do like this idea of Legacy Storm, that you are just playing a pile of therapies or duresses or Fotsis or whatever discard spells you play in those decks, and then you ramp into like Ad Nauseam, or you have the LED and Demonic or Infernal Tutor or whatever. So yeah, basically our idea was, okay, so we can just reprint Dark Ritual, right? And you can play Dark Ritual in Modern, you have Fotsis, you have Duress, and what's the worst that can happen? Obviously a terrible idea, but I would like for Storm to be a more spell-centric deck and less of a creature into gifts and given deck.
You know what would help the most? Something like, okay, there was a card called Helm of Obedience, like 2 mana, all spells cost 1 less, like both you and your opponents.
Helm of Obedience is the part of the Leyline combo.
Oh, okay.
You are talking about Helm of Awakening, I think.
Yeah, Awakening. Okay, Awakening.
Yeah, 1 generic mana less. 2 mana. Yeah. 2 mana artifact. All spells cost 1 generic mana less.
Yeah, and I think it would be perfectly fine. Like it's a symmetrical effect, and I see.
I think even non-symmetrical effect would be okay. Like all your spells cost 1 less. It would be fine as well.
Or your instant or sorcery spell, something like that. Like something that would let you not play Electromancer and Barrel, and this like artifact or
you know what they could have done? That would be so good. If they swapped the front and back side of Bergi. If the back side of Bergi, that artifact would make mana for casting spells, that would be so good. Even if it costs 3 mana, just 3 mana artifact. Whenever you cast a spell, you get 1 red mana, and it doesn't not emptying your mana pool till the end of turn is whatever, kinda. But just a 3 mana artifact. Whenever you cast a spell, get 1 red mana. I think it would be super good in Storm.
But 3 mana is a lot of. For
Well,
example,
not super good, but it would be a step in the right direction.
okay, something like. Do you remember Jace Sanctum for mana? Your instant sorcery spells cost 1 less.
It was played in Mono Blue Prison in Standard,
Yeah,
one of my favorite decks.
it
Yes,
was
yes.
Really cool deck. I was also playing it.
Wasn't it like 5 mana? Was it 4?
4 mana. Like this effect for 3 mana would be perfectly fine in modern.
Yeah, it was your spells cost 1 less, and when you cast a instant or sorcery, you scry 1.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that would be a perfectly fine card.
And it would let the deck combo off without a threat of creature interaction. Plus, it would give some consistency in form of scry action to not flat out.
I agree. Okay, that's it, I guess.
Yeah.
I want to apologize for all of you about arguing about Bridge from Below and Manaless Dredge for like 15 minutes. That's why this video is almost hour and a half instead of being an hour.
That's only the one thing, and I wrote more of my complaints on Facebook, and you can also write your complaints about how Jędrek was talking too long in each section. But overall,
But okay, that's my defense. This is the last video of this year, and we are not posting a video next week. So you've got a video that's twice as long because we are not posting next week. So it's actually next level.
No worries, actually. And
it's next level.
And overall, like all this discussion and all your all the things you wanted to add were interesting, even for me, even when I was listening to them like for the third or fourth time.
Of course. Yeah, I think that's kind of a downside that we also have a podcast in Polish together, because there are many things that we would like to talk about with you and also with our Polish audience, and then we end up doubling those things up.
Yeah,
and it's mostly me saying the same stuff in Polish and then in English, but Sodek also does it from time to time. So it's like, it's not ideal. But maybe someday we'll have our podcast in English, and then we'll say it in English on our podcast, and then on the Patreon again. So we'll still double up on everything. So
maybe triple it.
Maybe.
Come on, let's triple.
Okay. So that's it. So we wish you the very best for holidays, for New Year's Eve. I hope this holiday break will give you some well-deserved rest, that you will force a lot of Storm in Vintage Cube, which is coming to Modo tomorrow. If you have Modo account, you got 1 free Vintage Cube entry. Please spend it well and force Storm. Unless I'm drafting at the same table, then please pass me all Storm cards, because that's what I want to do. And even with your help, I probably will have a losing record with it. So yeah, from all of us, or both of us, I guess, here at Modern Solutions, we wish you happy holidays and peaceful New Year, just filled with Modern and Magic in general. Take care and see you in 2022.
See ya. Bye.